Hey everyone. One of the things I enjoy about taking time away from my normal day-to-day activities and going on vacation is the opportunity to reflect on my life. What I mean by this is taking stock of my living conditions, my working conditions, my spiritual conditions, and my social conditions. Even for red-pilled men, this is often hard, if not impossible to do, because as part of the human condition, we often don't see ourselves objectively. Some of us think we are far uglier than we are. Some of us think we're far more attractive than we truly are. Many of us think we're in better physical condition than we truly are. Even worse, many people think they deserve far better conditions than they actually do. A few years ago, this was exactly the case for me. I received 3 major injuries over the course of a year, and while recovering from them, I fell into a depression. The reasons for this were pretty simple. I was taking pain medications. The doctors told me I was barred from lifting more than 10 pounds, and I was restricted in my standing movement to 4 hours a day or less. Then I had to fight with my insurance company to get them to cover the rehab I needed to fully recover. As a result, I became socially isolated in large part because of my injuries, and the required recovery inhibited my ability to leave my home and carry on my normal activities of daily living. In addition, when all your life you never got injured, or, like me, you recovered extremely quickly from any injuries you've received, suffering 3 major injuries within a year that prevented me from even lifting 10 pounds is a very humbling experience, and it was a blow to my confidence. Injuries like what I suffered brought me face to face with my own mortality in very real terms, especially because this is the time when my second wife abandoned our marriage. However, when the divorce was finalized and I for the most part recovered from my injuries, the situational depression still existed, because the recovery process created a variety of bad habits, a few of which I'm still in the process of fixing. During the recovery process, my diet suffered, and as a result, I gained a lot of weight. The diet also damaged my organs, thankfully not permanently. The injuries, the poor diet, the divorce, when combined with my near helplessness, contributed to situational depression and definitely inspired social isolation, which created a downward spiral. While I perceived the problems I was facing, I couldn't completely resolve them. Further, because I was attempting to recover from not only my physical injuries, the destruction of my marriage, and all the situational mental health issues associated with those things, they limited my ability to objectively perceive my situation and the people around me. Some situations I could perceive extremely clearly and objectively, others not so much. For example, even though my health had almost completely deteriorated because of my poor diet and weight gain, I thought I had more physical endurance than I actually did. The reality was far different. I attempted to work outside for 4 hours one day, and I was wrecked for 3 days afterward. It was extremely humiliating, especially for me, because I used to physically work 12 to 16 hours a day consistently. When reality like this stares you in the face, be thankful that you perceive the truth, regardless of how brutal it is. This is where my martial arts training kicked in. I decided to focus on progression rather than the stagnation. This physical deterioration was now my baseline. Now I know where I am. Where do I want to be, and how do I get there? However, let's be real. The reality of my situation inspired a lot of insecurity that I had to work through as well. My journey back wasn't just one of physical fitness. It was regaining my mental health and resilience as well. The first thing I realized is that I had to change my environment, which I had already started doing. Then I purchased a new heavy bag and started using it. A freestanding water bag like the one Century sells is a great way to deal with red pill rage, mainly because it is far more resilient than beating a human, and it carries a far lighter prison sentence. Then I resumed strength training, martial arts, and most importantly, stretching. During this time, I also started transitioning my diet to something more healthy, and I cut out many processed foods and eventually carbs and most processed sugars. I also consumed far less alcohol. Thankfully, I don't smoke. All of these things were extremely emotionally difficult. Cutting out sugar is still a challenge, and while I don't drink soda, I am a huge fan of sweet tea ever since I first visited the South. It's still my kryptonite. Finally, the hardest part to deal with was the social isolation. This is in large part because all men with healthy levels of testosterone are prone to isolate. To deal with this, I cultivated strong social connections in my offline life, which has effectively inoculated me from this. Where am I today? I lost over 40 pounds of fat. I gained approximately 20 pounds of additional muscle. Range of motion in my joints and flexibility continues to improve, but is far better than when I started. While I am not where I want to be, I am far stronger than I was when I started. Old man strength for the win. And because I incorporated traditional martial arts training into my regimen, I'm secure in my ability to defend myself physically should I ever need to. As a man, every man should be able to defend himself when the need arises. And the reality is, firearms training is not enough. It never was. Which brings me to the real reason I created this video. We all go through trauma in our lives, and it's up to us to determine how or if we recover from it. I don't care who you are. We are all tested, often unfairly, because at the end of the day, life is unfair. Because I was dealing with 3 major injuries and the unintentional self-inflicted physical and mental ailments associated with it, like poor health caused by poor diet, muscle atrophy caused by the required recovery regimen, and the social isolation, as well as everything that stemmed from it, I allowed unhealthy people near me that under normal circumstances, I would never let get so close. These unhealthy people only made matters worse, and I'm still dealing with the fallout caused by allowing these unhealthy people in my life. Act in haste, repent at leisure. Though at this point, I got to admit, it is extremely amusing to listen to my detractors whine about how I'm worse than Satan, about how I'm responsible for everything from their nightmares to their acne and, of course, their bedwetting. But I digress. You see, when we talk about men's issues online, we only talk about them in relation to the male-female relationship. We discuss how women have been indoctrinated to become horrible people, and how the legal system and Western society enables and lionizes women for their bad behavior. However, what is almost never talked about, especially in the manosphere, is male bad behavior, or how some men are just as mentally unstable, dishonest, and manipulative as the women they criticize. It's sort of ironic, because many in the manosphere talk about the concept of the gynocentric blind spot. You know, the idea that men often refuse to perceive that a woman in their life can be unhealthy and not worth their time. But what is never discussed is what I'm going to term as the red pill blind spot. It's simply the idea that men have a red pill blind spot toward other men they perceive as red-pilled or masculine in the same way that blue-pilled men have a gynocentric blind spot toward women. Too many people mistakenly believe that if a man says something, especially if that man is outwardly charismatic, funny, or otherwise entertaining, that this by itself should engender trust. At best, this is retarded. At worst, it's setting oneself up to be manipulated and used. This is especially true if the man in question is pathologically logical in his arguments. This is because the majority of the people who exhibit this level of logic have no empathy or sympathy. This is because they're sociopaths and should be avoided at all costs. You see, anyone can rationalize any number of dishonest, illegal, or otherwise inappropriate behaviors if they're devoid of ethics and principles and they rely on logic alone. Pathologically logical people devoid of ethics and principles by definition cannot ever claim the moral high ground because they have no morals to speak of. By definition, they are amoral and thus cannot be trusted. These people will often admit they're not good people and will criticize or otherwise attack those they perceive as principled and ethical. To be clear, I'm not talking just about content creators. I'm talking about all men who do this. And the reason I'm discussing this is because when I was an MRA in the 1990s, I saw men like this trying to hide in the men's movement to avoid accountability for their often illegal conduct. They were DV perpetrators, pedophiles, and the garbage of society. They were sociopaths. Today, in the age of the internet, these same shitty men seek sanctuary in the red-pilled manosphere communities online. They're the reason man-hating detractors appear credible. This is because these shitty men are often the loudest voices and try to co-opt our communities for their own purposes. Their goals have nothing to do with helping men, regardless of their virtue-signaling lies. One of the ways to determine if someone is a sociopath is if they mirror. In other words, like female chameleons, male sociopaths will morph and mirror what you say. So you think you're having a conversation with them. But really, your words are providing the content. And all they do is mirror it back at you while really saying nothing beyond witticisms, platitudes, and reframed statements of agreement. They have no knowledge or independent perspectives to contribute to the conversation. However, because of the red pill blind spot, many people who support these men will start participating in Olympic-level mental gymnastics in order to make excuses as to why these men are above reproach, while at the same time attempting to explain away indefensible, unethical, bad behaviors. Here's a spoiler alert. No one, and I mean no one, is above reproach. Now, part of the reason I succumbed to the red pill blind spot is because I was suffering from trauma I detailed in the first half of this video. But honestly, even if I hadn't been suffering such a major life-altering trauma, I still might have succumbed to the red pill blind spot. So if someone like me can fall victim to something like this, anyone can. So let's talk about how to identify these unhealthy people, men and women alike, so you can disengage with them and otherwise avoid them. As I was reflecting on my situation, I asked myself a few questions. Of the people I consider friends and social contacts, who are the people who only contact me when they need help? Anyone who only contacts you when they need your help is not your friend. You only exist in their life as a safety net, nothing more. Who are the people who only contact you when they want something? This is much the same thing. They want to manipulate you for their benefit, nothing more. They think you're their bitch. Who are the people who never celebrate their successes or your successes with you? If a person, male or female, only contacts you when they're in trouble or want something, but they flat refuse to include you in their celebrations, you are not their friend and they don't give a shit about you. Are you in a one-sided friendship? In other words, do you share intimate details of your life, but they share nothing of theirs? Well, of course you're not their friend. Because even though you consider them your friend, their unwillingness to be just as transparent and open with you is a clear demonstration that they don't give a shit about you, regardless of their excuses. Further, many times these people are friendly and personable at a surface level, but refuse to share anything of significance about themselves. This is a form of hiding in plain sight. These people will often claim to be an open book with nothing to hide. They're engaging conversationalists, but will talk about everything else except themselves. When the conversation finally turns to themselves, these people will often get hypersensitive if anyone is critical of them, even if that criticism is well-founded. The thing is, even well-trusted good friends can turn into users over time. It does happen. This is why I always say, when the investment in the relationship ends, the relationship is dead. It's not when the parties part ways. This is not just true of romantic relationships, but personal and professional friendships as well. It's also why I say, trust but verify. Always. I mean, seriously, how many times have you heard of a man's lifelong best friend sleep with that man's wife? It happens all the damn time. The reason you verify the truth is to ensure you're being told the truth, because everyone lies if you catch them on the right day. Trust but verify is just as important in personal and professional relationships as it is in romantic ones. Now, you can confront these people to save the friendship or the professional relationship if you want to, but often it's a wasted effort. Because rather than address your concerns in a good faith and forthright way, they will either dismiss you, ignore you, project their issues back on you, or reframe what you say as an attack on them and then play the victim, just like a bitch. Further, if you're calling out a pattern of behavior rather than a single incident, they will often criticize you for bringing up the past, even though they're still exhibiting the same types of behaviors today, hence creating the pattern you're seeing. Or, what is often seen is people trying to recreate the past in their image and flatly deny the truth of their conduct, hoping you'll accept their misrepresented version of events. This is often done when the drama level is at its highest in the confrontation, because it's usually the only time such a bullshit tactic will work. The only thing these people will never do is address any of your concerns in an open, honest, or forthright way. To their mind, they have to destroy your credibility. They will never, ever admit to any kind of fault, nor will they ever acknowledge your criticism as valid in any way. The plain reality is that these tactics are highly unethical and indicative that the person in question doesn't give a shit about your relationship beyond somehow using you. Regardless of what they say, these actions are irrefutable indicators that this person needs to be out of your life as quickly as possible. They are cancer. Now, if your male friend does some of this stuff, then later calms down and comes back and admits the truth of their mistakes and the validity of your concerns, and then attempts to reconcile, well, that's actually a horse of a different color. And these people probably truly care about your friendship beyond using you. However, if they don't, cut them out of your life and don't look back. If they want forgiveness, they can ask God. And if they want your involvement, the best you can do is to make the appointment with God for them. After that, it's up to them. Now, once I identified these people, I cut them out of my life. I deleted them from my social media and my phone contact list, and I stopped associating with them. By the time I was done, I ended up deleting over 75% of my contacts. It was a very humbling experience and a bitter red pill to swallow. However, by abandoning the red pill blind spot from my life, today I'm far more secure in the people who remain in my circle because they're all proven friends who are as invested in me as I am in them. If you consider yourself a masculine red-pilled man or even a red-pilled woman, I suggest that every so often, reflect on your life and your situation. Objectively assess yourself and especially those around you. Then keep those in your life who are invested in you as a person. Identify those who are unhealthy and then take out the trash. I'm DDJ, and this discussion of the red pill blind spot is your dose of misandry today.